The wind howled like 1,000 lost souls, whipping snow into a frenzy that blurred the line between earth and sky. In the shadow of jagged peaks, where the ancient forest clawed at the heavens, a narrow crevice in the mountainside offered meager shelter. It was no more than a scar in the rock, carved by forgotten glaciers, but to the 10 huddled forms within, it was sanctuary, or the closest thing to it in this forsaken world. Elara pressed her back against the frozen wall, her breath fogging the air in shallow bursts. She was the smallest of them, her fur matted and white as the storm outside, but her eyes burned with a quiet fire that belied her omega nature. Around her, the others shifted restlessly, 9 wolves, kin by blood and curse. Their bodies a patchwork of scars from hunts gone wrong and pursuits that never ended. They were the remnants of a pack shattered by war, omegas all, born to serve, to yield, to survive on the fringes. No alpha's roar guided them now, only the relentless gale and the gnawing ache of hunger. The blizzard had caught them mid-flight, driving them into this hollow as night fell. Lyra, the eldest, lay curled at the entrance, her grey muzzle lifted to sniff the onslaught. "It's worsening," she murmured, her voice a rasp against the roar. "The spirits weep tonight." The others murmured agreement, their forms blending into the dimness. Thorn, broad-shouldered even in repose, pawed at the snow-dusted ground, his golden eyes flicking toward the darkness beyond. He was the strongest among them, yet his strength was tempered by caution, a legacy of too many betrayals. Elara's thoughts drifted as she licked the frost from her paws. Memories surfaced unbidden, the moonlit meadows of their old territory before the Great Schism. Their pack had thrived under the old Alpha Queen, a fierce she-wolf whose howl could summon stars. But the rival clans had come, driven by whispers of prophecy, a king rising from the ashes, one who would bind the wilds or burn them. In the chaos, the Omegas had been cast aside, marked as weak links, cursed to wander as outcasts. Some said their blood carried the taint of ancient magic, a vulnerability that twisted their shifts, making full moons agony rather than power. A low whine escaped from young Mira, nestled against Elara's side. The pup's ribs showed through her thinning coat, her whimpers cutting through the wind's fury. "Cold, so cold," she breathed, her voice trembling. Elara nuzzled her gently, drawing the little one closer. "Hold on, little shadow, dawn will come." But doubt clawed at her heart. Dawn in these mountains meant exposure, meant the hunters who prowled the passes, feral beasts twisted by the same dark sorcery that haunted their kind, or worse, the enforcers of the fractured realms below. The group fell into uneasy silence, broken only by the crackle of ice and the distant rumble of thunder. Kyle, ever the storyteller, began a low chant, his words weaving through the gloom like threads of smoke. "In the time before the great frost, the wolves danced with the northern lights, their howls echoing to the gods. But the Alpha King slumbered in the deep earth, waiting for the storm to call him forth." The others listened, ears pricked, finding solace in the old tales. Yet Elara felt a stir in her chest, a pull like the tide. She had dreamed of such a king nights ago, a shadow cloaked in dawn's light, eyes like forged steel, promising both ruin and redemption. Hours bled into one another, the blizzard's rage unyielding. Thorn rose suddenly, hackles rising as a new scent pierced the storm, musk and iron, faint but unmistakable. "Something approaches," he growled, his body tensing. Lyra's head snapped up, her blind eye gleaming milky in the low light. Not hunter, not beast. It's, him. The word hung heavy, stirring murmurs of fear and awe. The prophecy tale spoke of the Alpha King, the one who would claim the lost and forge them anew, or devour them whole. Elara's pulse quickened. She crept forward, peering into the white void. The wind tore at her fur, carrying flakes that stung like needles. Through the maelstrom a shape emerged, massive, unbowed by the gale. It moved with purpose. A lone wolf larger than any she had known, his coat black as midnight, dusted with snow that melted on contact. His eyes caught the faint glow of pre-dawn, burning amber. He paused at the crevice's mouth, steam rising from his breath, and tilted his head, as if listening to the heartbeat of the earth itself. The Omegas froze, a collective breath held. Mira buried her face in Elara's flank, trembling. Thorn bared his teeth in warning, but Lyra silenced him with a glance. "Wait," she whispered. "This is no ordinary dawn." The Alpha King, for what else could he be, stepped closer, his presence filling the hollow like a gathering storm. Up close. Scars etched his muzzle, old wounds from battles etched in legend. He regarded them not with hunger, but with a piercing curiosity, as if seeing beyond fur and frailty to the souls beneath. Elara met his gaze, and in that moment the world narrowed. The blizzard faded to a hush, and she felt the weight of destinies entwining. Was he savior or slayer? The answer lingered in the air, as fragile as the first light creeping over the peaks. He lowered his head, a gesture neither command nor threat, and the scent of him, earth and wild honey, washed over them. One by one, the Omegas stirred, drawn forward despite the fear coiling in their bellies. Thorn held his ground longest, but even he dipped his head in wary acknowledgement. The king did not speak, not yet, but his silence roared louder than the wind. As the storm began to wane, the first rays pierced the clouds, gilding the snow in gold. Elara's heart swelled with a mix of terror and inexplicable longing. The shelter that had hidden them now felt like a cage cracking open. Whatever this dawn brought, alliance, exile, or the spark of war, it marked the end of their isolation. The Alpha King had arrived, and with him the threads of fate began to pull taut. The first light of dawn crept into the crevice like a hesitant intruder, painting the snow in strokes of pale gold and revealing the Alpha King's form in stark relief. He stood unmoving at the threshold, his massive frame blocking the dying gusts of the blizzard, as if the storm itself bowed to his will. Elara's breath caught in her throat, the air thick with the scent of him, raw earth mingled with something sweeter, like wildflowers crushed underfoot in a forgotten meadow. It stirred memories she had long buried, of warmer nights when packs ran free under endless skies. The Omegas shifted uneasily, their bodies a tense circle of fur and flickering eyes. Lyra rose first, her old bones creaking like ancient branches in the wind. She limped forward, her good eye narrowing as she studied the newcomer. "You've come far, wanderer," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her limbs. "The mountains don't yield their secrets lightly. What brings a king to the door of outcasts?" He tilted his head, amber eyes sweeping over them one by one, lingering on Elara longest. When he spoke, his voice was a deep rumble, like thunder echoing through hollow caves, resonant and unhurried. "The storm called me, and the whispers of the lost." No arrogance laced his words, only a quiet certainty that sent a shiver down Elara's spine. She felt exposed under his gaze, as if he could see the curse woven into her blood, the way her shifts twisted like thorns, pulling her between wolf and something wilder, more fragile. Thorn growled low, stepping between Lyra and the stranger, his hackles raised like a barrier of brambles. "Whispers. We've heard enough of those to know they lead to chains or graves. If you're the one from the old tales, prove it, or leave us to our fate," the others murmured, a ripple of agreement born from years of evasion and loss. Mira whimpered softly, pressing closer to Elara, her small body quaking. The pup's fear was a mirror to them all, reflecting the fragility of their bond. 10 souls bound by survival, not strength. The Alpha King did not flinch at Thorn's challenge. Instead, he lowered himself to the snow, his massive paws sinking deep, and extended his muzzle in a gesture of peace. Steam rose from his breath, curling like spirits ascending. "I seek no proof from you, only truth. The realms below fracture under the weight of old wars. Enforcers hunt the marked, twisting the wild into weapons. I have felt the pull of your blood across the peaks, a thread of ancient light dimmed but unbroken." His eyes met Thorn's, holding them without force. "Join me or not, but the dawn rises, and with it, the hunters." Elara's heart pounded, a wild drum in her chest. She had always been the quiet one, the Omega who mended wounds and whispered comforts in the dark. But now, something stirred within her, a warmth uncoiling like the first thaw after endless winter. She rose slowly, ignoring Thorn's warning glance, and padded closer. The snow crunched under her paws, cold biting through her fur, but she felt none of it. Up close, the king's scars told stories of their own. Jagged lines across his shoulder from claws that rent deeper than flesh, a notch in his ear from blades forged in shadowed forges. He was no myth made flesh, he was battle-worn, real as the ache in her bones. "Why us?" she asked, her voice soft but clear, cutting through the tension like a blade through mist. The words surprised even her, born from a place she rarely voiced. "Omegas are shadows, forgotten by the packs. What light do you see in the broken?" A faint rumble escaped him, not quite a laugh, more like the earth's quiet sigh. "Shadows hold the stars. Little one, your curse is no taint. It's the echo of the first wolves, those who bound spirit to storm. I was born in ruin, cast from my own kin for a vision that burned too bright. But in your eyes, I see the pack I lost, and the one we might forge." He paused, glancing toward the horizon where the sun breached the clouds, turning the world to shimmering silver. "The enforcers come. Their howls ride the wind. Choose now, or the choice will be taken." The air grew heavier, charged with unspoken fates. Kyle, the storyteller, lifted his head, his voice weaving into the moment like a thread in a loom. "The tales speak of a king who gathers the forsaken, binding them with blood and moonfire, but betrayal shadows every crown." His words hung, a caution wrapped in wonder, and the Omegas exchanged glances, their bond fraying at the edges. Before anyone could respond, a distant howl pierced the dawn, harsh, mechanical, laced with the foul tang of sorcery. The enforcers, twisted guardians of the fractured realms, their forms warped by elixirs that fused wolf with iron and shadow. Thorn's ears flattened, his body coiling like a spring. "They're here. Too soon." Panic rippled through the group. Mira yelped, scrambling back, while Lyra's muzzle wrinkled in defiance. The king rose fluidly, his presence expanding, filling the crevice with an aura that pushed back the cold. "Run with me," he said, not a command, but an invitation etched in urgency. "Or stand and fall alone." Elara felt the pull again, stronger now, tugging at her core. The curse within her stirred, a faint glow beneath her skin, as if responding to his call. She glanced at her kin, the weary eyes, the trembling forms, and nodded, a decision forged in the fire of that single gaze. They moved as one, spilling from the shelter into the blinding light. The king led, his strides powerful yet measured, guiding them through a labyrinth of rocks and stunted pines that clung to the mountainside like desperate fingers. Snow gave way to icy streams, their paws splashing through water that numbed and revived. Elara ran at his flank, her breath sinking with his, the world blurring into a tapestry of white and green. Behind them, the howls grew closer, a chorus of pursuit that echoed their deepest fears. As they crested a ridge, the forest unfolded below, an ancient expanse of towering evergreens, shrouded in mist that whispered of hidden temples and forgotten rites. The king veered toward it, his voice carrying over the rush of wind. There in the heart of the old woods we find breath, but trust must be earned as scars are worn. Elara's chest tightened with a mix of dread and exhilaration. The isolation of their wandering life cracked open, revealing not just danger, but possibility. A pack reborn from the ashes of solitude. Yet, as they plunged into the shadows of the trees, Elara couldn't shake the ache in her heart. The king's arrival promised redemption, but at what cost? The curse hummed in her veins, a reminder that some bonds demanded sacrifice, tearing away the old self to reveal the fierce beneath. The howls faded slightly, swallowed by the canopy, but the true storm, the one of destinies colliding, had only just begun. In the dim light filtering through the branches, she caught a glimpse of the king's profile, etched with quiet resolve, and wondered if his eyes held the same hidden longing that now burned in hers. The ancient forest swallowed them whole, its branches weaving a cathedral of shadow and silence that muffled the distant howls of pursuit. Towering pines, their trunks scarred by centuries of tempests, loomed like silent sentinels, needles whispering secrets to the mist that clung to the undergrowth. Elara's paws sank into the damp earth, a welcome contrast to the biting snow, but the air here hummed with an older chill, one born of forgotten magic, where roots delved into realms beyond the living world. The scent of moss and decay filled her lungs, laced with the faint metallic tang of sorcery that made her curse stir uneasily, like a beast rousing from slumber. The Alpha King moved at the vanguard, his black form a fluid shadow slicing through the gloom. He didn't glance back, but Elara felt his awareness of them all, a tether pulling the ragged group forward. Thorn flanked the rear, his golden eyes scanning the tree line, muscles coiled for the leap that might turn defense into attack. Lyra limped steadily beside Kale, the storyteller's chants reduced to low murmurs that wove courage into their fraying resolve. The others, Mira tucked close to Elara's side, the rest in a loose formation, followed in hushed rhythm, their breaths syncing with the forest's pulse. 10 Omegas, once adrift in isolation, now bound to this enigmatic king by the fragile thread of dawn's promise. As they delved deeper, the mist thickened, curling around their legs like spectral fingers. Sunlight fractured through the canopy in fleeting shafts, gilding leaves that dripped with condensation, but warmth eluded them. Elara's flanks heaved, the run easing the numbness from her limbs, yet awakening deeper aches. The curse's subtle burn, a reminder of her blood's tainted legacy. She had always shifted uneasily, her form twisting midway between wolf and woman under the moon's gaze, leaving her vulnerable, exposed. The others bore similar marks, Mira's stunted growth, Kyle's visions that bordered on madness. Why had the king chosen them? His words echoed in her mind. Shadows hold the stars, but doubt gnawed at her, a quiet erosion like rain on stone. They paused at a clearing where a fallen giant lay, its trunk splintered and overgrown with luminous fungi that pulsed faintly in the dim light. The king halted, ears pricking to the forest's breath. "Rest here," he rumbled, his voice a low vibration that settled over them like a pelt. "The old wards hold for now. The enforcer's scent fades in these woods." He turned then, amber eyes sweeping the group with that piercing clarity, as if mapping their souls. Thorn snarled softly, circling the perimeter, but even he couldn't deny the exhaustion etching lines into their faces. Elara sank to her haunches, Mira curling against her warmth. The pup's eyes, wide and shadowed, searched the king's face. "Are you really the one from the stories?" she whispered, her voice a fragile thread. The others leaned in, drawn by the innocence that pierced their guarded hearts. Kale nodded, his tail-weaving instinct stirring, the alpha who wakes the slumbering packs, born of frost and fire. The king settled onto the moss, his massive form surprisingly still. scars catching the filtered light like silver veins. For a moment, vulnerability flickered in his gaze, a crack in the armor of legend. Stories are echoes of truth, pup. I was no king once, cast from the Iron Clans for a vision, a realm where the cursed are not chains, but keys. He paused, muzzle lifting to the canopy, as if scenting memories on the wind. My pack fell to the enforcer's blades, twisted wolves, bound to the sorcerer's will. I wandered alone, the curse of foresight burning my nights with glimpses of ruin. But in the storm, I heard your call, 10 lights flickering against the dark. Elara's breath hitched. Foresight. The word resonated with her own buried dreams, visions that came unbidden in the quiet hours, flashes of bloodied moons and a crown of thorns. She met his eyes, the connection sparking like flint on steel. Our curse. It's not just weakness. The elders said it binds us to the old spirits, makes us feel the earth's wounds. Her voice gained strength, words tumbling forth like a released stream. But it isolates us, turns us into ghosts among our own kind. He nodded, a gesture heavy with shared sorrow. Isolation forges the strongest bonds, little shadow. Yours is the blood of the first pack, guardians who wove the veil between worlds. The enforcers fear it, hunt it to fuel their machines of control. Join me, and we reclaim that power. His words carried a melody of hope, yet undercut by the melancholy of loss. Thorn snorted, breaking the spell. Reclaim, we've lost everything to pretty promises. What makes you different from the alphas who abandoned us? The king's response was a low growl, not of anger, but resolve. I offer no throne of gold, only the wild's truth, sacrifice for survival, blood for rebirth. As if summoned by his words, the air shimmered. A faint glow emanated from the fungi, illuminating runes etched into the fallen trunk, ancient wards pulsing with ethereal light. Elara felt it tug at her core, the curse responding. Her fur rippling as if on the verge of shift, pain lanced through her, sharp and intimate, but beneath it, power stirred. A warmth that chased the cold from her bones. Mira yipped in wonder, nosing closer to the glow. It sings, she breathed, and indeed a soft hum filled the clearing, like wind through hollow reeds. Kyle's eyes widened, his storyteller's soul alight. The Heartwood. Tales say it reveals the hidden self. One by one, the Omegas approached, the light bathing them in silver. For Elara, it unveiled fragments, her mother's face in the schism's fire, the pack's howls fading into silence. Tears stung her eyes, not of grief alone, but release, the solitude cracking, revealing the fierce heart beneath. But peace shattered like fragile ice. A guttural snarl echoed from the mist. Closer now, the enforcers' twisted forms bursting through the underbrush. They were abominations, wolves fused with jagged iron, eyes glowing with unnatural crimson, sorcery twisting their limbs into weapons of fang and forge. The lead one lunged, its maw dripping alchemical venom aimed at Mira. The king exploded into motion, a blur of black fury. He met the beast mid-air, claws raking deep, sending it tumbling with a screech of metal on stone. Thorn joined the fray, his caution yielding to protective rage, snapping at another's flank. Elara shielded Mira, her own hackles rising as the curse surged, granting her speed she hadn't known. She darted forward, teeth sinking into an enforcer's leg, the taste of rust and shadow bitter on her tongue. The battle was chaos, snarls and clashes ringing through the trees, blood staining the moss. Lyra barked commands, her voice a rallying cry, while Kyle wove between combatants, his agility a storyteller's grace turned lethal. One enforcer fell, its iron hide crumpling under the king's relentless assault, but another slashed at Elara's side, drawing a line of fire across her ribs. Pain bloomed, hot and vivid, but she pressed on, driven by the bond igniting among them. As the last twisted form fled into the mist, whimpering, the clearing fell silent save for labored breaths. The king stood over the fallen, chest heaving, a fresh gash weeping crimson on his shoulder. He turned to Elara, concern etching his features. "You're wounded." She met his gaze, the pain a forge for something new. Trust, tentative and raw. "We all are," she murmured, glancing at her kin, battered but unbroken. The rune's glow faded, leaving them in twilight's embrace, but the shift within lingered. In that moment, as mist swirled and the forest sighed, Elara felt the destiny tighten its grip. The king's arrival had shattered their shelter. But in the ruins, a pack stirred, not of submission but shared fire. Yet shadows loomed deeper in the woods, where temples whispered of greater trials. The enforcers would return, and with them the true test of sacrifice. For now they pressed on, the ancient paths unfolding like veins toward an uncertain heart. The forest's hush deepened after the skirmish, broken only by the drip of melting snow from branches and the ragged cadence of breaths settling into rhythm. Blood scented the air, sharp and coppery, mingling with the earthy rot of fallen leaves. But the mist veiled the worst of it, turning the clearing into a dreamlike haze. Elara licked at the gash on her side, the wound throbbing like a second heartbeat, warm ichor matting her white fur. Pain was an old companion, but this one felt different, earned, a mark of the fire kindling within her kin. Mira pressed against her, unharmed but trembling, her small form an anchor in the swirling uncertainty. The Alpha King paced the perimeter, his amber eyes scanning the shadows where the enforcers had vanished. Fresh blood streaked his black coat, the gash on his shoulder weeping steadily. Yet he moved with unyielding grace, as if wounds were mere whispers to his resolve. Thorn shook himself, flinging droplets from his golden fur, his glare fixed on the king. That was no rout. They'll circle back with more. Iron hounds and their sorcerer masters. We've bought time, nothing more. His voice carried the weight of strategy, honed from years of evasion, but beneath it lurked a grudging respect, the battle's fury forging an uneasy truce. Lyra nodded, her grey muzzle lifting to taste the wind. The old paths twist ahead, this wood guards secrets older than the schism, temples where the first pack bargained with spirits. If we press on, we risk more than claws. Kyle, nursing a limp from a glancing blow, murmured agreement, his eyes distant, as if chasing the threads of half-remembered lore. The others gathered closer, their forms a ragged semicircle, weary omegas, once shadows in the wild, now etched with the raw edge of purpose. The runes on the fallen trunk had dimmed to embers, but their echo lingered in Elara's veins, a subtle hum that eased the curse's twist, if only for a breath. The king turned to them, his presence a steady flame against the encroaching dusk. "Risk is the forge of packs. The temple you speak of, I know its call. It's where the veil thins, where curses can bind or break." His gaze settled on Elara again, drawing her forward despite the ache in her ribs. In his eyes she saw not pity but recognition, a mirror to her own hidden fractures. "You've fought like born guardians, but the true trial lies in what we carry inside." He gestured with his muzzle toward the mist-shrouded trail, where vines twisted like veins leading deeper into the gloom. Elara rose, ignoring the protest of her wound, and stepped nearer. The air between them crackled with unspoken currents, the scent of him, wild honey and storm, wrapping around her like a half-remembered dream. "What do you see in us that others don't? We're not warriors. We're the ones left behind." Her words hung soft, laced with the melancholy of endless wandering, yet threaded with a budding defiance. Mira watched from her side, ears perked, as if the pup sensed the fragile bridge forming. He lowered his head, muzzle almost brushing hers, a gesture intimate in its vulnerability. "I see the stars in shadows, Elara. My visions showed me 10 flames, flickering against the Enforcer's endless night. Yours is the blood that mends the veil, Omegas who feel the earth's pulse, who shift not in rage, but in harmony with the spirits. His voice dropped, a rumble meant for her alone. I've lost kin to this curse too. It took my sister's light, twisted her into something the sorcerers claimed. But in you, I see redemption. Not for me, but for what we could become. The confession cracked something in her, a wall of isolation crumbling, revealing the ache of impossible longing. Love in the wild was a fleeting spark, often snuffed by destiny's cruel paw, but here, in the forest's embrace, it flickered with tender violence. Thorn interrupted with a snort, breaking the moment. Visions and pretty words won't stop the iron tide. Lead if you must, King, but if this path leads to chains, I'll tear them myself. The group stirred, a murmur of resolve rippling through them. They moved out, the king at the fore, Elara close behind, her wound a dull fire that fueled her steps. The trail wound tighter, roots snaking across the path like warnings, the mist parting to reveal glimpses of crumbling stone, remnants of ancient arches overgrown with ivy that glowed faintly under the fading light. As twilight bled into the canopy, the air grew heavier, charged with an otherworldly hum. Elara's curse stirred again, visions flickering at the edges of her sight. Spectral wolves circling a stone altar, their howls weaving threads of silver light. She shook her head, focusing on the king's steady stride, but the pull intensified, drawing sweat from her brow despite the chill. Mira whined, stumbling over a root, and Elara nuzzled her, whispering, "Stay close, little one. The dark holds beauty too." Yet doubt clawed deeper. Could they truly forge a pact from fractures? Or would the temple demand a price too steep? The path opened to a ravine, bridged by a fallen monolith etched with runes that pulsed like heartbeats. Below, a stream rushed with waters black as ink, whispering of drowned secrets. The king paused at the edge, ears flattening as a new scent pierced the mist, sorcery acrid and insistent. "They're flanking us," he growled, body tensing. From the shadows emerged not enforcers, but something worse. Shadow wraiths, manifestations of the forest's betrayed spirits, drawn by the group's cursed blood. Ethereal forms, wolf-like but frayed at the edges, their eyes hollow voids that sucked light from the air. One lunged at Lyra, its claws phasing through flesh like smoke, drawing a yelp of ethereal pain that echoed her deepest fears, visions of the schism, kin torn asunder. The old wolf staggered, her form flickering as the wraith fed on her memories. Thorn barreled into another, his physical fury scattering it momentarily, but the spirits reformed, relentless. Elara's world narrowed to chaos, Kyle dodging tendrils of shadow, Mira cowering as darkness nipped at her heels. The king roared, a sound that shook the leaves, his own power surging, a burst of amber light from his scars, repelling the nearest wraith. But the assault pressed, one latching onto Elara, its chill seeping into her curse, amplifying the twist until agony ripped through her. She collapsed, vision blurring with half-shifts, fur melting to skin, then reforming in painful waves. In the haze, she saw the king's face, twisted in anguish as he fought toward her. "Hold on!" he bellowed, claws rending shadows. To save her, he unleashed more of his foresight, the air shimmering with prophetic threads that bound the wraiths, but at cost. His body shuddered, a fresh scar blooming across his chest as visions overwhelmed him. Glimpses of futures where packs rose and fell. Elara clawed free, the pain-forging clarity. Her curse wasn't weakness, but a key. She focused, channeling the hum from the runes, her howl joining the king's, a harmony that solidified the shadows, turning them to harmless mist. The wraiths dissolved with mournful wails, the ravine falling silent once more. Panting, Elara met the king's gaze across the bridge, their shared exhaustion, a bond sealed in sacrifice. He had lost a piece of his guarded visions to save them. She had glimpsed the depth of her power, raw and unyielding. Thorn helped Lyra across, the elder's eyes gleaming with quiet awe. "The temple awaits," the king said, voice hoarse but steady, "and with it, the heart of our rebirth." As they crossed into deepening twilight, the forest sighed in approval, but Elara felt the weight of what lay ahead, trials that would demand more than blood, tearing at the soul to reveal the unbreakable core. The impossible pull toward the king warmed her against the chill, a tender ache amid the violence, hinting at hope born from the brink of loss. The path to the temple gleamed faintly, a vein of light in the encroaching dark, pulling them toward destiny's unforgiving embrace. The temple emerged from the mist like a forgotten breath of the gods, its crumbling spires piercing the canopy where moonlight filtered through in silver shards. Vines choked the stone arches, their leaves rustling with an unnatural sigh, as if the ruins themselves mourned the passage of time. The air hung thick with the scent of damp earth and incense long faded, undercut by a faint electric tang that set Elara's fur on edge. Her paws tread softly on moss-slick flagstones, cracked and veined with glowing runes that pulsed like veins under skin. The wound on her side throbbed with each step, a hot reminder of the wraith's chill grasp, but the pain sharpened her senses, weaving her deeper into the group's fragile rhythm. The Alpha King led them through the threshold, his black form silhouetted against the inner gloom, where shadows danced like wary spirits. The others followed in hushed procession, Thorn's vigilant stride at the rear, Lyra's limp echoing faintly off the walls, Mira's small paws pattering close to Elara's flank. Kyle's murmurs had fallen silent, replaced by wide-eyed reverence as he traced the carvings with a tentative nose. Depictions of wolves entwined with ethereal lights, their forms shifting in eternal metamorphosis. The 10 Omegas, once scattered echoes in the wild, now filled the space with a collective presence, their cursed blood humming in harmony with the temple's ancient heart. Deeper in, the chamber opened to a vast hall, its ceiling lost to darkness, supported by pillars etched with spirals that seemed to writhe in the low light. At the center stood an altar of obsidian, smooth as polished night, encircled by a shallow pool that reflected the moon's pale glow. Water lapped gently at its edges, black and still, whispering promises of revelation or ruin. Elara's breath caught, the curse within her uncoiling like a serpent roused from sleep. Visions flickered at the periphery, her mother's final howl during the schism, the pack's bond snapping like brittle bone. She shook her head, but the pull intensified, drawing her toward the altar as inexorably as tide to shore. The king halted before it, his amber eyes reflecting the rune's faint shimmer. "This is the Veil's heart," he said, voice a low thunder that resonated through the stone. "Where the first pack forged their pact with the spirits, blood for power, solitude for sight. Our curses stem from here, twisted by the sorcerer's greed into chains." He turned to them, scars catching the light like badges of shared exile. "To break them, we must face what hides within. The temple demands truth, not force." His gaze lingered on Elara, a silent invitation laced with the weight of unspoken longing, stirring the tender ache in her chest, the impossible draw of two fractured souls circling destiny's flame. Thorn growled, circling the pool warily, his golden eyes narrowing at the water's depths. "Truth? This place reeks of traps. We've spilled enough blood for one night." Yet even he felt the shift, the air thickening with anticipation, as if the temple breathed with them. Lyra approached the altar, her blind eye gleaming unnaturally, and dipped a paw into the pool. Ripples spread, carrying visions that bloomed like ink in water, fragments of their pasts, the schism's fires claiming kin. Omegas cast into the wilds as sacrificial shadows. She withdrew, trembling, but her voice held steady. "It shows the wounds we carry. To heal, we offer them up." One by one, the Omegas stepped forward, compelled by the hum in their veins. Kyle went first, his storyteller's grace faltering as the water unveiled his madness, nights haunted by prophecies that drove him to the pack's fringes, whispering of kings and falls. He emerged with a shudder, eyes clearer, the curse's grip loosening like frayed rope. Mira hesitated, her small form quaking, but Elara nudged her gently. "It's all right, little shadow. Let it see you." The pup's reflection stirred images of stunted moons, her growth bound by fear, but as she pulled back, a spark ignited in her gaze, innocence tempered to quiet strength. Elara's turn came too soon, the pool's surface beckoning like a lover's cruel embrace. She leaned in, the water cool against her muzzle, and the visions crashed over her. The blizzard's isolation, her shifts tearing her apart in lonely glens, the longing for a pack that never claimed her fully. Deeper still, it revealed the curse's root, an ancient guardian's blood, meant to mend the veil but warped into vulnerability. Pain lanced through her, the wound on her side flaring as if the temple drank her sorrow. She gasped, staggering back, but in the release, power bloomed, a subtle shift, her form stabilizing, the twist between wolf and spirit easing into fluid grace. Tears froze on her fur, not of loss alone, but the beauty of being seen, truly seen for the first time. The king watched her, his own resolve cracking with empathy, the air between them charged with that forbidden tenderness, love born in the wild's harsh poetry, where sacrifice sweetened every glance. "You've carried it longest," he murmured, stepping closer, his warmth chasing the chill from her bones. But before she could respond, the temple stirred. The runes blazed brighter, the pool churning as if awakened by their offerings. From the depths rose spectral forms, not wraiths, but echoes of the first pack, translucent wolves with eyes like starlit voids. They circled the group, not in threat, but judgment, their howls a chorus of wind and whisper, testing the bonds forged in blood and storm. Thorn bared his teeth, body coiling, but the king raised a paw. "They seek the king's vow." The spirits converged on him, their light piercing his scars, unveiling his own buried torment, the fall of his kin, visions of realms crumbling under enforcer rule, the isolation of foresight that isolated him from all touch. He roared, a sound of raw anguish, unleashing a flood of prophetic light that bound the echoes in silver threads. The temple trembled, stones groaning as the veil thinned, granting glimpses of futures, packs rising in moonfire or shattering in endless night. Yet the offering demanded more. One spirit latched onto the king, drawing from his essence, and he faltered, a fresh scar etching his chest as a vision overwhelmed him. Elara at the heart of a reborn realm, her light binding the fractured wilds, but at the cost of his own shadow. Pain twisted his features, but he held firm, the sacrifice forging clarity in his eyes. A destiny intertwined, where his strength yielded to her hidden fire. The spirits faded with approving sighs, the pool stilling, leaving the chamber bathed in ethereal glow. Elara rushed to his side, nuzzling the new wound, her heart swelling with the violence of care. "You gave too much," she whispered, the words heavy with the ache of what might come, love's tender blade, cutting deep to reveal the unbreakable. He met her gaze, amber depths holding quiet hope. "For this pack, I'd give all." The others gathered, their curses diminished, forms subtly changed, fur gleaming with inner light. Shifts no longer thorns, but wings. Mira yipped softly, the sound a spark of joy amid the melancholy. But the temple's peace was fleeting. Distant howls echoed through the arches, enforcers, drawn by the surge of power, their iron forms crashing against the outer wards. Thorn's ears flattened, resolve hardening. "They've found us! The dawn's light calls them like moths!" The king rose, renewed despite the cost, his presence rallying them. "Then we meet them as one, not shadows but storm. As they braced for the breach, Elara felt the transformation take root, solitude yielding to destiny, each scar a symbol of the pack's rebirth. The impossible bond with the king warmed her against the encroaching clash, a promise of hope woven through sacrifice's dark thread. The temple's heart beat faster, pulling them toward the fray, where pain would serve purpose, and from the ashes something fierce and whole might rise. The enforcers breached the temple's outer wards with a thunderous crack, iron-shod paws shattering stone like brittle bone under fang. The air filled with the acrid reek of sorcery, burnt metal and shadowed alchemy, choking the sacred hush as twisted forms poured through the arches. They were nightmares forged in the fractured realm's forges, wolves warped by elixirs, their hides plated in jagged steel, eyes glowing crimson with unholy fire, claws scraped sparks from the flagstones, and their howls warped into mechanical snarls, echoing the temple's groans as if the ruins themselves recoiled. Ilara's hackles rose, the fresh clarity from the pool's ritual surging through her veins like liquid moonlight. Her wound still burned, a hot brand across her ribs, but the curse no longer twisted her form into agony. It flowed now, a river of spirit and fury, granting her senses sharpened to the edge of the veil. She stood flank to flank with the king, his black fur brushing hers in a fleeting touch that sent warmth piercing the chill of battle's approach. Mira huddled behind her, the pup's small body quivering, but her eyes fierce, no longer dimmed by fear. The 10 Omegas formed a ragged line before the altar, their once fragile bonds humming with newfound power, shadows no more but embers ready to blaze. The king stepped forward, his scarred frame a bulwark against the tide, amber eyes narrowing to slits of resolve. "They come for the light we've claimed," he rumbled, voice carrying over the din like a howl through storm winds. "But this temple is ours now. Fight not for survival alone, for the pack we forge in this hour." His words ignited them, thorn bared teeth in a savage grin. Lyra's frail form straightening with defiant grace, Kale weaving low chants that wove ethereal threads into the air, bolstering their spirits against the onslaught. The first enforcer lunged, a behemoth of rusted plates and venom-dripping jaws, aimed at the heart of their line. Thorn met it head-on, his golden bulk slamming into the beast with a clash that rang like struck anvils. Claws raked iron, drawing foul ichor that sizzled on the stone. But the enforcer's counterstrike gashed Thorn's shoulder, sending him staggering. Elara leaped to his aid, her empowered shift granting unnatural speed. She darted beneath the abomination, fangs sinking into the soft juncture where metal met flesh. The taste was bitter ash, but she held, twisting until a screech of tearing gears echoed, the limb crumpling. Chaos erupted in the hall, pillars trembling as bodies collided in a frenzy of fur, fang, and forge. Kyle dodged a sweeping tail tipped with barbed wire, his agility turning storytellers' tales into lethal dance. He nipped at joints, unraveling the sorcery's weave with precise strikes born of visions half seen. Lyra, her blind eye now flickering with spectral sight from the ritual, barked warnings, guiding the younger ones through the melee. Mira, emboldened, yipped and snapped at a smaller enforcer's heels, her stunted form no longer a curse, but a darting shadow that harried and distracted. Yet the tide pressed, more enforcers surging in, dozens now, their crimson eyes fixed on the altar's glow, drawn by the ritual's echo like moths to unraveling flame. One broke through, barreling toward the pool, its sorcery-laced breath fouling the waters with dark tendrils that threatened to corrupt the veil. The king intercepted, a whirlwind of black fury. He clamped jaws on its throat, shaking with primal force, until iron buckled and the beast went limp. But in the fray, a hidden blade, forged in shadowed sorcery, slashed across his flank deeper than before, drawing a roar of pain that shook Elara to her core. She whirled, heart clenching at the sight of him faltering, blood staining the obsidian altar as he pinned another foe. The impossible pull between them sharpened amid the violence, a love forged in glances stolen during flight, now tested in the crucible of loss. "Not yet," she whispered through gritted teeth, charging to his side. Together they felled the attacker, their movements sinking like breaths in shared dream, her grace weaving through his power, a harmony of Omega light and Alpha storm. In that union the temple responded, the runes flared brighter, silver threads lancing from the pillars to bind the nearest enforcers, their forms dissolving in bursts of acrid smoke. But sacrifice demanded its toll. An enforcer sorcerer emerged at the rear, cloaked in swirling shadows, its paws tracing runes that summoned chains of dark ether. The links lashed out, snaring Lyra first. She yelped as they pierced her spirit, dragging forth visions of the schism. Kin lost to flames, her own exile a wound reopened. The elder fought, her howl a defiant aria, but the chains tightened, her form flickering as life ebbed. "No!" Kyle lunged, but a chain caught him too, his chants twisting into screams of unraveling prophecies. Elara's world blurred with rage and grief, the curse's power surging unchecked. She broke free of her own bindings, the silver threads aiding her, and barreled toward the sorcerer. Claws raked its ethereal hide, but it countered with a blast of shadow that slammed her against a pillar, stars exploding in her vision. Pain bloomed anew, ribs cracking under the force, but she rose, fueled by the pack's cries, their bond a lifeline pulling her upright. The king was there in an instant, his wounded body shielding hers as he unleashed a prophetic roar. Amber light exploding from his scars to shatter the chains. Lyra and Kyle collapsed, breathing but broken, their eyes dimmed by the drain. The battle teetered, enforcers faltering under the temple's wrath, but the sorcerer rallied them, summoning a vortex of dark wind that howled through the hall, uprooting vines and cracking stone. Mira's cry pierced the gale, trapped under a falling slab, her small form pinned, terror widening her eyes. Elara's heart shattered. The pup, symbol of their fragile hope, now faced the wild's cruel maw. She lunged forward, ignoring the king's warning growl, and heaved the stone aside with strength born of desperation. But the sorcerer's claw descended, venom gleaming, aimed to end the line of the Forsaken. In that suspended breath, Elara felt the veil tear within her, a final transformation stirring, the curse yielding to destiny's forge. She met the blow not with evasion, but embrace. Her body shifted, spirit light bursting forth to absorb the venom, turning it to harmless mist. Agony ripped through her, deeper than any wound. As the poison coursed her veins, demanding she yield something vital, her isolation, the walls guarding her heart. Tears streamed as memories flooded, endless blizzards of solitude, the ache of unclaimed love. But in release, power bloomed absolute, a radiant howl escaping her that shattered the vortex, scattering the remaining enforcers in rout. The sorcerer recoiled, its form unraveling under her light, fleeing into the night with whimpering howls. Silence fell, heavy and profound, broken only by the drip of blood and the temple's settling sighs. Elara collapsed beside Mira, freeing the pup fully, her own body trembling from the cost. The venom had scarred her soul, etching a permanent mark that bound her irrevocably to the pack, to him. The king nuzzled her gently, his warmth a balm against the inner chill, amber eyes holding depths of gratitude and unspoken fear. "You gave your shadows for us," he murmured, voice rough with emotion, the tender violence of their bond sealing in the aftermath. Thorn limped forward, supporting Lyra, while Kale stirred, his vision steadied. The Omegas gathered, battered but alive, their forms aglow with the ritual's lingering grace, curses transmuted into strength, solitude forged into unbreakable unity. Yet Elara felt the weight of what remained. The enforcer's masters would not rest, and the king's prophecies whispered of a greater storm, one demanding the ultimate sacrifice. As moonlight bathed the hall in silver mercy, she met his gaze, the impossible love between them. a quiet flame amid the ruins, hope's fragile dawn born from pain's unyielding purpose. The temple stood as witness, its heart beating in rhythm with theirs, pulling toward the final trial where destinies would clash and rebirth await. The temple's silence wrapped around them like a shroud woven from moonlight and spent fury, the air heavy with the tang of blood and scorched sorcery. Shards of broken iron littered the flagstones, glinting dully where the enforcers had fallen, their twisted forms dissolving into wisps of acrid smoke that curled toward the cracked ceiling. Elara lay still for a moment, her chest heaving against the cool stone, the venom's scar pulsing deep within, a hollow ache where her shadows had burned away, leaving her raw, exposed, yet strangely whole. Mira wriggled free, her small tongue lapping at Elara's muzzle in frantic gratitude, the pup's warmth a fragile spark against the encroaching chill. The Alpha King pressed close, his breath warm on her ear, the gash on his flank seeping steadily now, staining the obsidian altar crimson. His amber eyes, softened by the battle's toll, held hers with a quiet intensity that bridged the impossible chasm between them, Omega light to Alpha storm, solitude yielding to shared flame. "You faced the dark and claimed the dawn," he murmured, his voice a rumble laced with wonder and weariness. The touch of his nose to her brow sent a tremor through her. Tender amid the ruins, stirring the love that had bloomed unspoken in flights through blizzard and mist. It was a bond, forged in sacrifice, fragile as frost yet unyielding, promising redemption even as destiny's shadow loomed. Thorn limped to the pool's edge, his golden fur matted with ichor, supporting Lyra whose breaths came shallow, her grey form etched with the chain's ethereal burns. Kyle stirred nearby, his eyes clearing as the last vision settled, no longer a madness but a gift honed sharp. The other Omegas gathered in a loose circle, their bodies a tapestry of wounds, shallow gashes, bruised limbs, but their gazes burned with a new fire, the ritual's grace transmuting curse to power. The runes on the pillars dimmed to embers, the temple sighing as if exhaling centuries of guarded secrets, the veil mending around them like skin over a healed scar. Yet victory's hush fractured under a deeper tremor. The altar quivered, the black waters churning once more, not in threat, but revelation. From its depths rose a final echo, not of the first pack, but a vision unbound, summoned by the king's prophecies and Elara's sacrifice. The air shimmered, unfolding a tapestry of futures, fractured realms where enforcers' iron tides drowned the wilds in endless night, or a reborn expanse where packs howled under unscarred moons, bound by blood untainted. At the heart stood 10 flames, them, intertwined with the king's shadow, weaving light through storm. But the weave demanded one last thread, a choice, etched in loss. The king stiffened, his scars flaring with amber glow as the vision gripped him. He rose, body coiling against the pain, and faced the group. "The temple has judged us worthy," he said, words heavy with the weight of foresight. "Our curses break here, but the realm's fracture calls for a guardian, a king to hold the veil, or a light to mend it." His gaze fell to Elara, the impossible pull tightening like a noose of fate. "I've seen it. I bind the storm, but you light the way. To forge the pack, one must yield the crown." Elara's heart clenched, the scar within her throbbing in rhythm with his words. Yield. The love between them, born in glances across blizzards and battles, now demanded the wild's cruel poetry. Separation for unity, sacrifice for rebirth. She rose unsteadily, nuzzling Mira aside, and stepped to the altar's edge. The water reflected her transformed form, fur gleaming silver, shifts fluid as spirit wind, no longer twisted thorns, but wings of shadow and star. "We've wandered alone too long," she whispered, voice steady despite the ache. If my light mends what your storm guards, then take it, but not without this." She pressed her forehead to his, sharing the warmth of her essence, a silent vow, tender and violent, sealing their bond beyond flesh. The others watched in hushed awe, Thorn's growl softening to a low whine of understanding, Lyra's milky eye gleaming with ancestral pride. As Elara dipped her muzzle into the pool, the vision consumed her. Pain lancing through like the venom anew, drawing forth the last of her isolation, the lonely howls of endless nights, the unclaimed heart. She yielded it willingly, her light bursting forth in a radiant cascade that bathed the hall, threads of silver weaving into the king's scars. He roared, body arching as the power surged through him, mending his wounds even as it etched a final mark, a glowing rune across his chest, symbol of the pack's heart. The temple trembled one last time, stones settling as the veil sealed, the visions fading to clarity. Not ruin, but hope. A realm where omegas rose not as shadows, but equals in the wild's grand weave. Elara pulled back, weakened but free, her form lighter, the curse's weight lifted like dawn-dispersing fog. The king stood taller, his amber eyes now laced with her silver light, the Alpha's isolation cracked open to the pack's embrace. As the first true rays of morning pierced the spires, gilding the ruins in gold, the group moved as one toward the threshold. Mira bounded ahead, her stunted steps now sure and swift, yipping a joyful challenge to the waking world. Thorn flanked Lyra, their strides synced in quiet solidarity, while Kyle's chants rose soft, weaving tales of the dawn's arrival. Elara walked beside the king, their shoulders brushing in the dawn's gentle warmth, a gesture final and profound, speaking of love's quiet endurance, pain's purpose fulfilled. They emerged into the forest's embrace, the mist parting like a veil lifted, revealing peaks bathed in light and valleys stirring with life's tentative pulse. The enforcers' distant howls faded to echoes, the greater storm held at bay by their forged unity. Elara glanced back at the temple, its spires silhouetted against the rising sun, a scar on the horizon that mirrored the one in her soul, permanent, yet beautiful in its story of transformation. The pack howled then, a chorus of 10 voices blending with the king's deep rumble, echoing across the wilds. Not a cry of loss, but rebirth, destinies entwined in the endless dance of shadow and star. In that sound, solitude died, and hope's fierce heart beat on.